You'd feel it if it had a little wire in it. I don't think that one does. Yeah, man. You've been, I know you've been hustling and bustling, but you've been seeing some of the stuff coming down, on your phone.
You talk into the microphone. So just kind of alternate. This is the original.
How are you? Good. What's your last name? Oh,
Hey, Commissioner Horton, can you hear us?
I can.
Excellent.
You have your mask on?
only thing I saw was that the election stuff center. It said it's handled by the election superintendent, so I guess that Hayes, whatever she did want to call for referendum, she can. Okay. Now the other thing I saw was the resolution, and I'm sure you prepared that too. I'm sure that's right. And I'm just been I thought I was. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but it's just enough that I've never seen. And it'll last like 24 hours.
Hey man, I was. Yeah. Down in Santa Rosa.
Well, they might, that's right. I'm sure they do.
Actually, we're staying in a private home. It's one street over from 304. Yeah, it was nice. So I had to come back. Yesterday it was unbelievable. No. Yesterday they had red warnings out for all of the rip currents, and I was telling Mark last night, I have been on the beach all my life. Scuba dive, do all this kind of stuff. Never have I ever been in a rip current. And I got in one 4 times yesterday. Yeah. First time without a float. Next times I had a float.
God, we haven't. We haven't taken one out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening. Welcome to the Oconee County Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, July the 7th. If you're joining us virtually, hopefully using a computer or a smart device, to comment or ask a question during the public comment portions of the meeting, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. From a computer, click on the participants icon at the bottom of the screen, then click raise hand. From a mobile device, tap the raise hand button at the bottom of the screen. In just a moment, we'll ask you to stand for a moment of silence. Then after that moment of silence, we'll ask Justin to lead us in the pledge. Thank you.
We got a moment of silence.
Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Horton?
I voted aye.
Okay, very good. Sorry, I forgot to mention Commissioner Horton is joining us from the virtual format. He'll be participating actively in the meeting tonight. Any statements or remarks from citizens on anything that is not on the agenda for tonight? Thank you. Any statements or remarks from commissioners?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. With that, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. We're going to take June 2nd and June 30. Commissioner Horton was at these two meetings, so we'll take those two together first for approval.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
A second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our next two set of agenda minutes will be June 16th and June 23rd.
I make a motion to approve the June 16th and 23rd as submitted.
Second.
Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. We'll move now into our hearing and zoning actions. Just for, let me read out our code of our zoning amendment action procedures. The zoning petition shall be presented by the county staff with no time limit. The applicant and those signing up to speak for the petition will be allowed a total of 20 minutes, unless the applicants reserve time for rebuttal. Those signing up to speak against the petition shall be allowed a total of 20 minutes. The public comment section will then be closed, and the board will have the opportunity to ask questions as they find appropriate, and then the board shall take action as set out in the Unified Development Code. Our first case tonight is rezone number P20009. This is Tommy Dukes on Appalachian Downs Drive. It's 12.14 acres. The request is to go from AR3 to AR3 with modifications to rezone number 3576.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me get the applicants in here. Thank you, sir. All right. The location of rezone P20009, James Carroll Dukes, you can see the site here. This is in Appalachian Downs subdivision. It's parcel A03C012. Again, the parcel shown there is in country estates, in rural places, character area. And they're proposing to subdivide the approximately 12 acres into two 5.6 and 6.49 acre tracts. Staff has recommended approval of this request with the following condition, and Planning Commission also recommended approval with the same condition.
All right, thank you very much. Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Okay, I am James Carroll Dukes. I go by Carroll normally. My wife and I, we were the developers of this tract of land, and at the time we developed it, on a private drive, you could only have 3 lots. That has been changed to 5. We've been out here a little over 15 years, very nice subdivision. I'm sort of the de facto, I guess, because I was a developer and I'm the oldest one that lives in there if anything goes wrong. Very nice neighborhood. Really have enjoyed it. It's just at our age, it's got beyond what we can take care of. The house is too big, the yard's too big, and we need to downsize a little bit, and we're requesting that y'all allow us to subdivide so we can do that.
All right, very good. Thank you, sir. Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak for this rezone? Does anyone wish to speak against the rezone? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open it up to any questions from commissioners.
I don't have any.
I don't have any.
Anything, Commissioner Horton? You good?
No, sir, I promise you, if I've got a question, I will raise my hand or
All
you'll
right.
know that.
Thank you. With that, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve rezone number P20-0009. Applicant Tommy Dukes, location Appalachian Downs Drive, acreage is 12.14, split to 2. Request AR3 to AR3 with modifications to rezone number 3576.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Next item is rezone number P200013. The applicant is John Allen Drew. This is Georgia Highway 316 at Dials Mill Extension and Dials Mill Spur, 4.52 acres. This is AG with a request to go to B1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Again, this is a location map just off of Dials Mill Spur and 316 for rezone P200013 for John Allen Drew. The aerial view of the 2 subject parcels located along 316, Dials Mill Extension, Dials Mill Spur. Again, the properties are zoned AG in the suburban neighborhood character area. This is the proposed concept plan that you have in your packet of the 2 medical office buildings and septic field, as sewer is not available in that area. This is staff's recommendation. Staff recommends denial because it does not match the character area of the comprehensive plan. It is a suburban neighborhood character area, and therefore this commercial use does not fit in that character area. However, if the board so deems appropriate to rezone the property, we do request that these conditions be added, along with one more condition from the Planning Commission. They recommended approval with staff's conditions and the additional condition of the subject property being used for medical offices only.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Williams with W&A Engineering. I'm here representing Mr. Drew in this zoning matter. Just a couple points I'd like to note is that, currently, we understand the incompatibility with the future land use, but currently there are only 3 other lots on the Highway 316 corridor that's zoned a suburban neighborhood. On the other hand, there are 44 lots of various sizes adjacent to 316 with the Gateway Technology Gateway designation. Dozens or more just off the right of way, leading to a couple hundred parcels known as regional center on the future land use map. When Georgia Highway 316 was initially designed, it was intended to be a professional office corridor leading from Metro Atlanta to the University of Georgia and the entirety of its path. I think if you look at the designation of suburban neighborhood, you'll understand with the shape of this parcel and how it is. This parcel will never be used as a suburban neighborhood. Describes a large lot, single family neighborhood with open spaces and green spaces and walking paths and such as that. So not arguing that it doesn't meet the definition in the land use, just that the land use in this case is probably incorrect being adjacent to 316. Additionally, the compatibility with surrounding land uses, my firm many years ago zoned the property that's just to the east of the track, B2 and OIP. and there's OBP to the north on the opposite side of 316. So you would not be creating any type of spot zoning or land use island by granting this request. B1 would serve as an adequate transition between residential that is existing to the south and the arterial to the north. And thirdly, several subdivisions as well as Stadium and Bogart around the area, as well as a couple around the area, Dials Mill Plantation, Wildflower Meadows, would benefit from this type of use and this type of intensity, the low intensity use that we're proposing there. We recognize that, there may be some opposition to this with the neighbors adjacent, but we understand that the conditions that are placed on us, we've got to improve the roadways as necessary to provide adequate access. And buffers are obviously a part of the requirement. This project will be on septic. Sewer's 8,000 feet away. I spoke with Guy this afternoon just to clarify condition number 2 to make sure that it wasn't implied that it was mandated that we have sewer, just that if it was required by code at the time, or if it was within the location that we could attach to it, we would. But medical offices is an appropriate use for this area, certainly, probably one that's even limited or lower use than what may be expected along the 316 corridor. Finally, I'll speak to the site coverage issue and the intensity of development, because because we're on septic, we've limited this site to 12,000 square feet of office space. And the parking that's required from that only equates to about 23% of the total site coverage area. B1 would allow up to 70%. So the amount of green space and open space that's being left on this site, not being developed, this is a very low impact development for this area, and low traffic. You're only got about, very minimal peak hour traffic with an office use relegated. That's in the staff report. It's in our report how many that is, if anybody's interested in seeing that. But due to these factors, we would request that you approve the project as provided and as recommended by the Planning Commission as well. So thank you for your time. I'll be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. We have received notice from the applicant to reserve the constitutional rights under the rezone. Mr. Drew.
Hi there. My name is John Drew, and I was a resident of Oconee County for 10 years. And I was the CEO of Athens Regional Health System for 30 years. And during my entire career, I have spent many hours working on bringing available health care to Oconee County and all of the all the greater Athens area. Specifically, we established the first regional first care in Watkinsville. Myself and my CFO, former CFO who passed away, Larry Webb, built the building at Stonebridge and recruited Hawthorne Internal Medicine to establish a practice there. I helped facilitate, or actually came up with the idea of merging EMS for Athens and Clark County and Oconee County under National Ambulance to provide a regional response for emergency services. And so I'm extremely familiar with the needs of Oconee County. And I was on the original planning group for 316, and we did envision it to be a professional technology corridor. With that being said, when this land became available, I bought it knowing that the area was growing, particularly along 316. And particularly at this point in time, we have an enormous amount of growth on the other end of Dials Mill Spur. We've got Piper Glen going in, probably with a couple hundred homes in Bogart. And we got an enormous amount of growth at the Georgia Club on the Oconee side. And bringing primary care to this area would be extremely beneficial. In my ideal would be to recruit a physician who's both trained in internal medicine and pediatrics. IM Peds is what they call it. There are people like that available. Or to get a family practice group there to serve the needs of those growing families in that area. The only person you've got right now serving that need in Oconee County, at that end of the county, is really Mike Cobb. And Mike is my age, and I don't know how long he's going to stay in practice, but there is absolutely an established need for that, for internal medicine for the older people, family medicine for the family and young people, and pediatricians. And I think we could probably recruit somebody to establish a practice there. It really, practice utilization is by appointment only. And a physician can only see 3 to 4 patients an hour. So there's not a lot of traffic that's going to be created by that coming off 316. And I mean, people come, they're gone within an hour, typically. And that's just the way those practices work. And it can never be a big building because the physicians can't afford the overhead or something like that. I mean, their overhead is 50% of their practice income, and it just doesn't work for them. So taking all those factors into consideration, that's what Carl Nichols and I came up with the concept of utilizing that land for a limited, small, convenient medical practice for that particular part of the county. I did meet with a good number of the neighbors over the past several months before this whole virus thing hit, and appraised them of what we were thinking about. At that point, there was no objection. I see there are a couple objections this evening signed up. But originally, I talked to all the adjacent neighbors, and they understood what we're planning on. The property originally had a home on it. It was owned by John Vogel. I mean, it's owned by me, but John Vogel and Lisa Vogel rented it from me. After John passed away, Lisa has tried to stay there on a very limited income. She couldn't afford it. And so when she left, I had a contractor go in and look at that home, and he just came out shaking his head and said, there's no way we can repair that to put it back on the rental market again. It is just it's just in too bad a shape. And so my choice was to leave it there, board it up. And I decided, after talking to my wife, I decided that it was going to be a public nuisance to attract people into it without my permission. It was probably going to increase the infestation of animals around it. And so I decided to go through the expense of tearing it down. So I really have no use for the property as a rental property. Mrs. Rita Huff owns the trailer that sits on the corner property. I charge her a very minimal rent every month. It's $150 a month to stay on it because that's been her home site all these years. And I don't know, right now, if she were to leave, and I don't know how what the timing would be on this, but she could probably just move the trailer. I've tried to be a really, really favorable landlord to everybody, take care of things, but I don't have any use for that property. And like Mr. Williams said, it's just too small to develop as any kind of a home site at this point in time. And so with that, I'll thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, but let me tell you a funny story about 316. You may or may not know this. Like I said, I was on the original planning group, and we were sitting around in a meeting one day, representatives from Gwinnett County, Barrow County, Oconee County, and Clark. And somebody said, we need to come up with a name for 316. And we're all scratching our heads. What should it be? I said, I got it. Somebody else took credit for it, but I came up with it. I said, we'll call it University Parkway. This way the people in Atlanta will think it refers to a road to Georgia Tech and Emory University. And the people in Athens will think it will be a road to the University of Georgia. And everybody will embody that as the name without anybody getting irritated by it. So every time I would drive down the road, if I had one of my daughters or son's friends in the car, I would say, look at that sign there. Guess who named it? So anyway, that's how the name came back to University Park. Thank you.
How much time's left? 8:05. 8:05 left. Dwayne, you got 8:05 left for rebuttal. Those sign up to speak against, I have John Vogel. Come on up. Just state your name and address for the record, and you can give us your comments.
My name is John Vogel. I live at 1051 Dials Mill Spur, right across the street from that property. I've never lived on that property. I'm John Vogel, my brother Ed Vogel, which Mr. Drew meant to say. So, like he said, that property is not big enough to develop, but it's big enough for development of a homestead. Another thing is I got a petition here of all the neighbors that live on the road saying that they do not want it changed. Can I present this to you?
Yes. Thank you.
And he said that it won't produce more traffic, but it will. That intersection already had 2 accidents this week alone. Yesterday, around 4 o'clock, it had one, 3:30, 4 o'clock. So that being said, with the more traffic coming in through that intersection, it's going to cause more traffic accidents because there's no light there. Also, they're planning on closing that road there. So it's going to cause more traffic going out and about on Dials Mill Road. And I've lived on the property for 39 years, and I don't want to see it change. I want it to remain as a homestead place. And everybody else on the property doesn't want to see the added traffic going up and down the road because people don't know where they're exactly at, looking for the place. And that's pretty much what I got to say about it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kenneth Reynolds.
My name is Kenneth Reynolds. I live on 1241 Dials Mill Spur. As John mentioned, I don't think this lot is adequate for a medical complex. I would like to give Mr. Drew a praise because Miss Rita's lived there in that trailer on his land now for a long time. He could have bought it and said, goodbye, get out. He did not. He kept it, let her stay right there and doing what he said he did. You know, you got to give him praise for that. And I will. Could I get a overlay of the location, please? That well. Right there. Stop right there, and we'll move from there. Okay. You said something about the traffic on that road, Dials Mill extension. If there's been a survey on the traffic, I'd like to see it. That is a busy road. It is really busy. Like John said, there's been 2 wrecks this week alone. I don't know. It's just a lot of traffic on that road coming and going every morning, every afternoon. You have to be real careful. Now, in the past, as John said, they mentioned closing Dial Mill extension, which if you move this to the right, I don't know if you can or not, but there's a triangle in there. And that's Dial Mill. Okay. Dial Mill Road is a triangle that Dial Mill Extension runs into, off 316, Dial Mill Extension, Dial Mill Road, back 316, just like a triangle. They've tried several years, that triangle has been proposed to be developed. It's been sold numerous amount of times. A friend of mine even bought it and couldn't get anything done, so he sold it again. Now, if Dials Mill Extension is closed, that's going to throw all the traffic over on Dials Mill Road, which is the subdivision, Dial Mill Plantation, which is a huge amount of traffic on that road. Every morning, every night, all day long. So now we got Dial Mill Road dumping into Dial Mill Extension by coming back around. You understand what I'm saying? So what's that going to do for the traffic situation? And I just don't see where it's adequate for a business, that small amount of land. Now, 13 acres across the road, the triangle that I'm talking about, that'd be perfect for some kind of business. But the little lot that Mr. Drew owns, I just can't see it. And that's my opposition. The traffic is a lot heavier than's mentioned. I live there, been there 35 years. No, 45 years. My wife will get on to me about that. I can't remember our anniversary. But I've been there a long time anyway. And there's a lot of traffic on that road. Because we went from a dirt road to a paved road, see. And there's a lot of traffic on that road, more than you realize. And that's all I got to say is if they close Dial Mill Extension, that's going to throw everything back over to Dial Mill Plantation, which is on Dial Mill Road. And you're going to might as well put up a red light in the traffic jam. Okay?
All right. Thank
Any
you, sir.
questions?
Not at this time. We may ask you something later on.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
One more.
Yes.
Sorry.
Hold
I
on.
did not hear a little.
Well, come on up.
The-
Yes, ma'am.
The paper was gone, but
Okay.
sorry about that. My name is Paige Mann. I live at 1081 Dials Mill Extension. If you'll go back to that aerial map, if possible, if you will look at the house, the bottom right-hand corner of the picture that has the Dials Mill Extension, that's our house. I'm on the corner right there of Dials Mill Extension and Dials Mill Spur. So I work for a general contractor. We do this all the time. We buy land and build stuff. So I completely understand what Mr. Drew is wanting to do. My concerns as a parent and as a resident is, number one, the traffic, just like everyone else has said. They've all said there were 2 wrecks there this week. One of them actually ended up in part of our yard right there at the Dials Mill Spur stop sign. We actually own the little piece of property. If you will see the red outline of Mr. Drew's property, the little piece of the white line is actually owned by myself and my husband. It's tiny. We pay taxes on it, and there it is. I mean, it doesn't do anything for us, but either way, I have 3 children, 1 14, 1 9, and 1 that is 1 year old. I don't even allow my children to play in the front yard now because of the traffic on that road. If it is not, big trucks or the roll-off trucks, but they're very respectable and do that. But the traffic at all hours of the day and night is there. I make them play in the backyard or the side yard. I don't let them go out there and play in the front yard, which is where most of our yard space is for them to throw a ball or kick, ball, whatever. We also have a golf cart, I will say, and we ride down that little Dials Mill Spur Road, and in the evenings and just enjoy all the residents down there. We wave at them and so forth, where, we feel like that'll be taken away. Part of that will be, because I'm not going to get out there on that road when there's people coming in and out constantly for doctor's appointments and so forth. To that, the medical office part of the staff recommendations, number 5 would be for medical use only. I would like that even further extended to what type of medical use.
I don't want a methadone clinic beside my house. I don't want a pain management type clinic beside my house. And I know that Mr. Drew is not proposing that. He's proposing a pediatrician or internal medicine and so forth, but he's not locked to that. You know what I mean? He can say it's medical and do what he wants to after everything is said and done. So just with that, as a concerned resident, concerned parent, I just wanted to get up and speak for just a second about the traffic and the type of medical office that is there. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Hang on just a second, John. We got a virtual participant.
Hello. I'm not really good at all this stuff, but my name's Kate Carpenter. I was at the last meeting, and I really don't know how any of this works. But Paige is my neighbor, so I'm at 1061. She is at the corner of Dallas Mill Spur, Dallas Mill Extension. I'm the next house over. And as she said, our number one concern with this project is traffic, and more traffic. I would like to see if there's any way the commissioners can get a hold of some numbers, because I'm kind of a factual kind of person, to see what kind of traffic counts we have there now, how many doctors will be at this proposed facility. Mr. Drew had mentioned that there's only about 4 clients per hour that a doctor's office can see. I was a vet tech for many years, and I can tell you that it doesn't really work that way. And if you've gone into any doctor's office, you kind of know that it doesn't work that way. You're always overflowed. They're always busy. You've got all the staff, as well as all the people coming and going. You've got salespeople coming and going. You've got all that kind of stuff going on. So you've got to really include all of those people into the traffic numbers. And I would like to see how many doctors he's going to have in there, and what the car count is predicted, because that's really what we're concerned about. And if people are turning off 316 to turn down Dallas Mill Extension, to turn down Dallas Mill Spur to get to this complex, it is going to cause wrecks, and that's inevitable. But I'm really worried about the traffic numbers. I'm worried about the people trying to find the facility to slow down and cause accidents that way. We already see a tremendous amount of accidents right at that intersection. And I just don't see bringing a medical facility into that area without some kind of DOT recommendation and some cold hard numbers. I put a business in Athens, Clark County, and I had to do all that from my little podunk business. So I would think that there would be some kind of checks and balances in place to be able to mitigate the traffic and make sure that it's safe and it's not causing a lot of problems. I also mirror what Paige says about the type of medical facility. Nobody wants to live next to a methadone clinic. Nobody wants to live next to a pain management clinic. And usually these things are not a big problem, because most medical facilities are around hospitals, commercial land, and they're not right up against residential areas. So that is a huge concern for us, because we want to keep our kids safe. As it is now, you get people that are in hit and run accidents out there on 316. And there's just last week, I was told to go in my house, lock my door. I couldn't go to work because there was a hit and run right there, and it was a very bad accident. So, these are things, we do live by the highway. And yes, we knew buying those properties that we were living by the highway, but at the time, and still today, it was people like, Kenny, people like, who else come up there? Jenny's husband. Anyway, people that have been there for decades, and I feel safe, and I feel like if I have a problem, I can run to my neighbors, and we can feel safe. But the other thing that I worry about is buffers. If he's on such a small lot trying to build such a big facility, I don't see where there's really room to have any kind of buffer in place to separate out the business side of it to the residential side to where it's not impacting our quality of living and the way that things are for John and Jenny. I mean, their driveway is going to be literally across the street from this driveway. They can walk out of their house, walk across the street, walk into the parking lot. And, you know, they say that it's not suitable for a residence. Well, I don't agree with that. There was a residence there before forever and ever and ever. There can be a residence there again. So I just don't completely agree with that statement. Now, having said all that, I understand progress. I understand we're by the highway. I understand development. It's going to happen. It's probably a matter of when, not if. But if they're going to propose something like that and they're going to try to do the whole gateway development, then they need to not have a little portion of it to be business and all around it residential. It needs to probably be one or the other. That's just my opinion. But with this project, I do think that the traffic, we need some hard numbers, and we need to really look at that before any decisions are made.
Thank you very much. Any other raised hands? Yes, sir. Yeah, come to the microphone.
Excuse me. So further down the road, 316 towards Oconee Connector is where this ought to be, because all that is medical. Also, Mr. Drew brought up Rita Huff's name, which my father-in-law, mother-in-law owned the property that he bought. He bought it from Linda Milton property. And there's a stipulation Milton put in place when he sold it to Mr. Drew, is that Rita Huff could live there as long as she was alive, and that she would not have to move. But if he develops it, he's going to make her move, which will break a verbal contract that was made between him and Mr. Crawford. And the person that was speaking just previously said, my driveway will be like right there. And I've been on that property since 1980. I was there before the highway was there. I was there when the roads were dirt. I've seen it change. I've seen the highway come in and everything. And I do not want to see that piece of property change to commercial business or whatever, general business. And the majority of the people that live on that road feel the same way. And I hope that y'all leave it like it is, for the sake of the people that's on that list of paper right there, that's been there most of their lives also, except for a few others that live, they're like renters that live there, but they've been there for a long time also. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple points to bring out. People wanted some numbers on this. Here's some numbers for you. So anytime we're talking about traffic in our world, we fall back on the IT manual, the Institute of Traffic Engineers manual that scripts all the trip counts for every possible use. And in this case, we're talking about medical office use. For this particular type of medical office, for this medical office development with 12,000 square feet, you're talking about 34 a.m. peak hour trips and 43 p.m. peak hour trips. We're right at a third of the number of trips that your county traffic engineers even require a traffic study. That's how limited the trips are, because we're only talking about building 12,000 square feet. Take that one step further and say that, numbers wise, as far as development intensity along 316 and what you see in corridors like this, typically, now remember, we're limiting to 2 buildings at 12,000 square feet of medical office. For a 4.5 acre tract, the developable intensity for a retail shopping center would be about 45,000 square feet, which is, that's 4 times what we're proposing here. For office, it would be more like 60,000 square feet, and that's 5 times what we're proposing here. So Mr. Drew is really asking for almost the minimum he can to be able to develop this property in a viable economic fashion. We don't have. I mean, you guys heard from Mr. Drew. He's been a member of the community and participated in the community for years. He doesn't have any desire to have a methadone clinic or pain management clinic. If whomever makes a motion wants to exclude that as a part of as a condition, that's not a problem. That way, for those that don't fully understand what I'm saying, that becomes part of the binding plan and documentation of what's being approved, and that can't be changed without coming back before this board. So no methadone and no pain management clinic. Buffers, landscape strips, or in screening are all shown on the site plan at an appropriate scale and in compliance with the Oconee County Code. So if anybody has any questions about those, I'll be happy to answer, or any other questions that you might have. Okay. Thank you for your time.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comments and open it up to questions from any commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple.
Okay.
Just curious, do we know if that Dow's Mill extension, have we heard anything about it closing?
You got anything on that? I don't recall what the DLT plan is for that one at this point.
Mr. Chairman, and Commissioner Horton, we reached out to GDOT to request a conceptual layout of 316 and what closures may be projected for the future, and they did not respond to that request. So as of now, I don't have any definitive concept plan that would show the closing of Dow's Mill extension. However, it is possible that could be cul-de-saced on both sides if and when 316 goes limited access.
Okay, if you would just please stay right there. Let me ask you this: Is it normally our practice of, and I would say of modern times, of having medical facilities like this with septic instead of sewer?
Typically, they're developed where sewer is available, and I think that's not just that sewer is available, but that the market drives it in that location due to other uses that are in the area that support it. So not that I don't know that we have denied an access to medical offices because of septic use or lack of sewer. However, generally they are found in much denser commercial locations where sewer is available.
Okay, my next question is it normally what we see in these matters where an office complex would be, the request would be B1 instead of some lesser OBP or OIP, something like that?
Typically, we find that a medical office usually looks for the OIP, office, institutional, professional. It's the least intense zoning district as opposed to a B1 or a B2.
Okay, the next question would be, if this board were to approve that as a B1, it is possible for an applicant, owner, whoever that might be down the road, to come back and ask for a change. Is that correct? Or the use for that B1 zoning?
Yes, sir. If you were to approve it with the Planning Commission recommendation of restricting it to just medical offices, it would still have the B1 zoning, and the owner at that time could come back and request for that condition to be removed. Yes.
Okay, my last one is, it seems to me the intersection of Dials Mill and the extension is a pretty bad one for any type of increased traffic. So if it were approved, what improvements would be at that intersection?
That would have to be reviewed through the DRC process, at which time Public Works would review proposed plans and determine what improvements would be required of the applicant.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, I've got a question for you. Have you tested the soils or had any information on that?
Just on the general soils maps, I mean, but we've got over 2 acres set aside for septic, and this is a medical office of this size will use less water than a residential home. So, I mean, there's ample room out there to find the soils out there, but we haven't done a level 3 soil survey, which will be required. But we know that the soils in that area are good. In fact, the Dials Mill plantation is right next door, all has similar soils. I did that design, and they're all on septic over there as well.
Okay. I noticed that you have the storm water detention area that is behind the septic drain field.
Yes,
So
sir.
you would actually have to pipe through the septic drain field.
Yeah, everything would be, it would be a contained stormwater system. So it would come out of the storm, and then we would go around that area. It would come out of the parking lot. We'd go around that area, and there's some setbacks and stuff that are required from that for the septic.
Right.
So I think it might be 50 feet that we can't put a drain line within that amount. And certainly we've done medical offices on septic, and as well as higher intensive uses as well.
Okay. I'd like for you to respond to the comment that Commissioner Horton asked about on the B1 zone versus the OIP. If you could respond why you guys chose the B1 over the OIP.
Well, I mean, the adjacent property to the right is B1, and it had a lot of flexibility built into it. I think the initial thought was it would have a more flexible designation. But then when we got into the process and saw that, there were some opposition and stuff, rather than peeling it back out and requesting the OIP, we just accepted the condition that it would be relegated to medical offices only, because the process to come back and change that, Commissioner Horton's right. I mean, we could come back and ask for a change to that, but the process to come back and change that, the applications, the reports, the legal descriptions, everything is exactly the same for me coming back and asking for a rezone. So it's no different, and it's just as binding. So once the Planning Commission wanted to add that stipulation to take away any future flexibility that could be there, then we agreed to it. Certainly, I don't know the legalities behind this, but your attorney could advise you as to whether or not you could choose to approve it as OIP, but it wouldn't bother us now because we've already agreed to the condition of the medical offices.
Okay. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Guy, on the triangle portion of it across the street, do you know when that was zoned that way?
About 2004.
2004, the one across the
Ish,
street?
probably.
204?
Yeah, 2004, 2005, because we did that. I mean, that's just a guess, Commissioner Saxon, but it was well before 2009, and it was after I started in business, so I know that's roughly when.
Thank you. I will call you, John. I got a question for you though. Not John, I'm sorry, Mr. Vogel. Mr. Vogel, I got a question for you. How many people live on that road? How many houses are on that road? Roughly, you don't have to get it exact.
Now, if you see the names on that water address,
Yeah, no,
is that what you question?
no, it's not. It's not. I guess my question is back to Mr. Drew. You said you talked to people when you got up here and you was talking about, you said you had conversations with people before COVID-19 started. So my question to you, Mr. Drew, is there's 14 or 15 homes on there and the petition has 10 different addresses that signed against it.
I talked to the people adjacent to the property. And I talked to
You
everybody.
mean right across the street?
I talked to everybody in this room. And
The only one is,
some people thought it was an extremely good idea. They all did. They thought it was a reasonable approach when I went to them. I didn't go beyond the adjacent properties. In fact, the lady in the middle said she would like to bid on the project from the phone conversation I had with her if the project got done. She said her business would like to bid on the project. I talked to John's wife. She had no objection to it. I said, have him call me if he wants a question. I think I gave her something in writing. I left it in the slot. I can't remember. I had a letter prepared. I gave it to some people. I just talked to others about what we're doing. But all the adjacent neighbors thought it was a very reasonable approach on my part, and that's why we moved. That's how we moved forward with it. And at that point, I stopped. The lady who was just on the phone, Mrs. Carpenter, I did not go to that house because that was not adjacent to the property. I talked to everybody who was adjacent to the property. And I was absolutely shocked when I saw what was being said here, that these people have changed their mind. I mean, they have a right to, there's no question about it. But I did not proceed ahead. If I had gotten objections, I would have said, whoa, we just probably don't need to go further.
Well, I guess that's getting to my question. I mean, you're kind of answering it because, I mean, here's 10 different addresses on the road and there's 14 or 15 people living on the road and 10 of them say they don't want it developed like that.
Okay, and probably many of those addresses, I don't know, if they're on Dials Mill Spur, they are beyond that property. There's no reason any traffic would go down there at all. That is a dead-end turnaround down there. If you look at Dials Mill Spur, there is a court down there.
Yeah, everybody who signed it's on the spur. So everybody that signed it's on the spur. But even though there's 18 signatures, there's only 10 addresses on here though.
Okay. And all they would be doing is driving by that property to get to their homes. So that's why I didn't bother going down there and speaking with everybody, because it wouldn't impact them at all, traffic-wise. All they would be doing is driving by that medical office building on their way to and from leaving the area.
Thank you.
I don't know whether that answers the question or not. But I did speak with everyone, and these people have all changed their mind.
Thanks, sir.
And by the way, one last comment.
That's good.
There's no knowledge. I have never had any knowledge of Mrs. Huff being promised anything with respect to that property. It's not in the deed. It's not in the transfer of property.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have any.
None. Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we deny rezone number P200013, John Drew, George Highway 316, Dow's Mill Extension, Dow's Mill Spur, 4.52 acres, AG to B1.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. We have a motion to deny rezone number P20-0013 and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Horton?
I said aye.
Okay. All right. Motion carries. Our next rezone is rezone number P20-0030. This is William B. Jones, US Highway 78 at Mars Hill Road. It's 32.079 acres. The request is from B2 Highway Business to B2 Highway Business with modifications to rezone request number 7702.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the location map for rezone P200030 JPC applicant owner. It's located at March Hill and 78. You'll recall we rezoned this a while back, and one of the conditions that the board placed on the property was eliminating a driveway at this location right here. And the applicant has come back to request that this condition be removed. This is the condition that was placed on rezone 7702. The developer shall eliminate side driveway 3, depicted in figure 5 of the traffic impact analysis submitted on 1/31/2019 and attached here too, and install an internal connection via site driveway number 2 for access to phase 1 of the development. The internal connection is shown at this location to driveway number 2. Staff and Public Works, planning staff, and the Planning Commission have all recommended denial. However, if the board so does desire to approve the request, we would ask that it be with these conditions as shown here.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Rowland. I'm with Rowland Engineering. My office is at 318 Corporate Parkway, Macon, Georgia, 31210. As was mentioned, this property was rezoned last year, and in the process of the rezoning, it was recommended that a driveway to Mars Hill Road be removed from the plan. During the design of the project, we come to the conclusion that that driveway would be essential to the operation of the business. And we realized that on Mars Hill Road, exactly opposite, mirror opposite to this location, the racetrack convenience store across the street has a driveway in what would be the mirror location as shown, as we had shown on Mars Hill. We're maybe 15 feet farther away from the intersection than that existing intersection for racetrack. We did redesign the plan somewhat to move our driveway number 2 farther away from the intersection. And our proposed driveway number 3 that was denied, we have also moved it back a little bit farther. We have sent the plan and the overall plan to Georgia DOT. Since the Planning Commission meeting, in the meantime, we have received an email from District 1 Traffic Operations that Georgia DOT approves the location of driveway number 3. They have purview over it because of its proximity to the intersection with US 78. They have recommended approval. They said they will approve the location with some stipulations. One stipulation being they may require a right-hand passing lane on Mars Hill Road. And their other stipulation was that if driveway number 2 is constructed, they would require that our driveway number 3 be converted to a right-in, right-out only driveway. And we have no problems with their conditions. There are representatives of Jones Petroleum here to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer, but I'd be glad to answer any that you have at this time.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak for this rezone?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Jones. I'm the registered property owner of the property that I'm sure y'all are familiar with, that originally owned by the Crow family out here on Highway 78. We came originally, we're in the petroleum distribution business and food and convenience store business. And we came originally to apply for zoning just for that replacement of what the unit out there called AJ's. And it was more or less told we need to show what we intended, what a plan would look like for the entire piece of property. And everything that we put on there, other than the replacement of AJ's, is purely speculative. I understand there's been numerous inquiries about a location of a Publix grocery store. And I've heard from some of those developers, and I'm here to tell you firsthand, it's purely speculative. They just have made many proposals to enter into an agreement that whereby they would tie your property up for 12 months while they sought to come up with a development plan. Our sole interest at this moment in time is to rebuild, recess back further than where the AJ store currently is, recess it back with a new facility. Today, the drive is, those of you that frequent that location, that drive must be 100 yards wide, you know, from the intersection down Mars Hill Road. And I've ridden Mars Hill. It basically is a dead-end street. It has a few houses way back there that represent traffic that would travel in the direction of 78, which would I assume the reason for this suggestion is on the drive location is to prevent stacking of automobiles that might result because of oncoming traffic coming up Mars Hill. Just don't exist. I don't see that traffic that would cause a traffic jam because we just don't have that traffic. Now there's plenty of traffic across Mars Hill, you know, going on the Whitensville, Georgia side of 78. That's a different matter. And our plan actually is more conservative than the one that was approved for the racetrack group. And we'll add, and of course, as our engineers explained, we sought the advice and counsel of, we had a traffic study, had the advice and counsel of the Georgia DOT, and they saw nothing wrong with that as far as any complications with congestion at that intersection coming as a result of this development. So we just respectfully ask for a variance of what the planning group has suggested be done. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Anyone else for the rezone? We're looking on time. We have no one signed up to speak against, so we'll open it up to the floor. Anyone wishes to speak against this rezone? With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open it up to questions from commissioners. Hear none, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to deny the request as presented.
Second.
We have a motion to deny rezone request number P20-0030 and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries. Our next item is consider rezone number P200034. This is for Lee and Courtney Dorman. East of Old Bishop Road is 3 acres. The requests go from AG to AR3. You got it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll see the location map for rezone P20-0034 for the Dormans. They're requesting to cut out a portion of the 10-acre tract. It's a 3-acre portion, leaving approximately 7 acres left in AG. This would be zoned to AR3. It is currently zoned AG. It's in the country estates character area for the comprehensive plan, which supports the requested zoning size, parcel size. And this is the concept plan showing 3 acres and 7 acres. Staff recommends approval with one condition. Planning Commission recommends approval with the same condition.
Very good. We'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Good evening. My name is Lee Dorman. My wife and I, Courtney Dorman, own the 10 acres out there on 2026 Old Bishop Road. As you know, the county only allows one dwelling per parcel of land. And so what we're trying to do is divide the land so that we can build what we hope is our final home here in Oconee County. The current zoning for ag allows us to divide it 5 acres and 5 and 5. Just from a topographical standpoint, if you want to pull that back up, just from a topographical standpoint, dividing it 5 and 5 with that long skinny lot puts it in a really odd dimension, and it also puts the back property line right where the best home site for the house that we would like to build is. We're currently under conservation right now with the 10 acres. As long as we title it the same, it will stay under conservation. So we have no desire to sell the property. We have aging parents that may desire to live in that little house once we build. It would be a rental property at best. And that's about the gist of what we've got.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak for this rezone? Does anyone wish to speak against? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comments. Any questions from commissioners?
No.
All right, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve rezone number P20-0034, Lee Dorman and Courtney, east of Old Bishop Road, 3 acres, AG to A3, AR3, with the one condition.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to approve rezone number P20-0034 with one condition. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our next item is variance number P20-0035. This is for John Haddon and DGDF Holdings LLC. This is on Cliff Dawson Road, 19.28 acres. The request is reduction of buffers between agritourism use and single-family residential use. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. This is the location map for variance P200035. The property, the aerial photography property located at Cliff Dawson Road. Again, the property is zoned AG. It is in the Civic Center character area. You'll see here the conceptual plan provided with the application. And the applicant is requesting a variance from UDC section 315.c and UDC section 806 to waive a portion of the required buffer along the southern property line and reduce a portion of the required buffer along the northern property line. Again, this is a proposed landscape rendering of the buffer being planted along the north boundary line. The variance that comes into play is right here where the barn is located. It is too close to the property line to meet the 50-foot buffer requirement. It's hard to see, but the 50-foot line is right at the back of it. So there's approximately 18-foot variance is required for that barn to be used. The reason this came about is the application for an agritourism use on the property. You'll recall that we, based on the comprehensive plan, we went through and rewrote our UDC to allow your agritourism uses. This is our first application for that. And in the agritourism ordinance, it requires that there be a 100-foot buffer between uses and adjacent residential properties. However, if you cannot meet that 100-foot buffer, a 50-foot buffer would be required per Article Section 8. And that means a landscaped buffer per the landscaping ordinance, our UDC. The request is to use the barn for that agritourism purpose, and thus you'll notice on this exhibit it shows the separation between it's hard to read that, but it shows this separation there between the property and barn itself. So in order to use the barn for an agritourism use, the variance is required because it does not meet the distance separation. This exhibit shows the additional landscaping that's proposed behind the barn. You'll see them located here. This is existing landscaping. And this shows additional landscaping that's proposed all along the northern property line. Representative photos, you have these in your packet of the farm as it sits, the barn as it sits now next to the property line. And staff recommends, staff says the request meets all necessary conditions to grant the special exception variance. And if approved, staff recommends it be subject to the following conditions fulfilled at the expense of the owner developer. Number one, in addition to the proposed vegetative screening along the northern property line, a 6-foot-high masonry wall shall be constructed for the length of the proposed buffer reduction as shown on the associated concept plan. The remainder of the northern property line adjacent to agritourism use shall meet the 50-foot incompatible use buffer requirements of UDC Article 8. And number two, all sound amplification shall occur only indoors and shall not violate the Oconee County noise ordinance.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Abe Abu Hamdan. I reside at 1601 Robin Hood Road. I'm a principal engineer with ABE Consulting. Good to see you all. I know the circumstances are not perfect, but we appreciate what y'all doing for the community to keep things moving. Thank you for allowing us to be here before you on this subject. I will try to be brief and get to the point. One thing, the staff did cover the subject very well. I think in terms of the conditions, we will talk about that. But first, I'd like to just let you know that we have the owners here, Mr. Jennifer and Mr. Haddon, John Haddon here. And also we have Mr. Jeff Deloach. He's here on behalf of the owners as well. What the Haddons wanted to do is create a nice farm, a nice setting, beautiful, inviting. They wanted this to be more of a family-oriented farm. It is. If you haven't been there, and I trust that some of you may have been there for the purpose of this variance request, you will see that they poured in a lot of love, a lot of work, a lot of money spent on this in this farm, because it is the main goal is a family-oriented farm, and the secondary aspect of that goal is to be able to use it under the agritourism for some wedding venues. They can't do anything else. It's not allowed by code. That's not what we're here for, to change and be able to do different uses on that. So, but it is truly beautiful. They themselves reside on the property, so it is dear and important to them. They're looking at it every day. They're living it, in it. So with that, if I could, I get you to play that video that we had, little clip, it should be short. appreciate it very much. As you could see, it's clearly made to be family friendly for the community. Right here, 24 acres that the Haddons could have done a multitude of things. They could put 20 houses on that property, but they chose and elected to do, this nice farm and a lot less impact to anything around it. So with that, I'd like to also, since the first submittal mentioned to you that the building itself has gone, the barn, subject barn, that is closer to the property, and that's why we're here on that special exception variance, it has been modified tremendously. They have gone to the 2x6, wall studs, very well insulated with spider insulation. They've done spray foam up in the ceiling of the barn. Everything was 5/8 of an inch sheetrock, both sides of the walls, and all that was done. Any windows that were operable were removed, replaced with casing windows so they cannot be opened. So the only doors we have were on the side and on the front of the barn. So on the back of the barn, it's a solid brick wall. And all that was designed with the intent in mind to mitigate sound, to lessen any impact possible, planted a lot of trees, a lot of evergreens, and part of our really alternate plan for item number 1 or condition number 1 that I was recommending a short wall be built. As you could see, if you could put that on, please. It really would not, that one right there, thank you. You would see on the left, top left, that, that wall really won't give you a whole lot of buffer because you're looking at a solid brick wall, but actually with the section on the top right, you will see the added row of evergreens, and the landscape buffer will give you a whole lot more of buffering the building, and any sound will be mitigated even further. The building itself is set in grade at least 12 to 14 foot. So really from the front, as you come approaching it, you can't really see but the roof just about. As far as that, we would ask if they could entertain, if you could entertain, Mr. Chairman, members, Board of Commissioners, having the alternate plan as far as not implementing the wall, but actually add the landscaping. Now that is coupled with a full planted buffer along the northern property next to Mr. Thomas' property, and that's the open field. So you could see along the northern part of that property, all that green. On the front, it's already buffered along Cliff Lawson, but on the north part along that open field, we are proposing to put an evergreen and a planted 25-foot buffer within a 50-foot, maintained buffer in that area. So that's part of the alternate plan. Now, as far as, the second item or condition that relates to the noise, and I'll be honest to tell you, it's, it's a little hot in here, but it's difficult to see that such building built so tight, so soundproof that you actually have a drop of 40 decibels 5 feet away from the footprint of that building, outside the building. So we have done a lot of tests with the noise that you can't even bear it inside, and went outside and did some decibel testing, and you have automatically 40 decibel drop 5 foot outside that building. We've opened the doors and went down to the lake dam and also near the property lines and to Mr. Thomas's house, which is about 300 feet away from the corner of that barn. All other houses in the area, they're over 500 feet from that barn. And the noise was minimal. You couldn't even hear. I mean, it was, you might hear a little bit of bass, but it wasn't noticeable. It wasn't even registered on the meter. So the ambient noise was even higher than that. So what we're trying to tell you that the owners have done everything possible to contain that and to have this condition that says you can't have any noise outside. It's just hard to really have a venue, a wedding venue, and not have some music outside, especially if you bringing the bride from prep room to the barn. It just makes it very difficult to operate, and I'm not sure why this particular section of that condition is presented, which it should be in fact more to meet the noise ordinance that you have in place, and they have to work with it and meet it, and they're prepared to do that. They're not saying that's not the intent. It's all of the time their intent to maintain that noise level, stay below it, and that's why they've done all this work. They spent a lot of money, a lot of effort, a lot of love. So with that, I'm going to let Mr. Deloach speak to that effect.
My name's Jeff Deloach. I live at 1571 Crystal Hills Drive, and my office is also in Watkinsville. I appreciate being here with y'all tonight. I'm going to try to be very efficient and try not to repeat what Abe has had to say. I'm going to get the legal stuff out of the way. I do have a letter. I've got an original and 3 copies I can get to Ms. Abe. But the short of it is I do represent the Haddon family and proud to do so. That letter simply asserts that our constitutional objections to a denial of this, and specifically an objection with respect to the conditions. But putting that aside, what I want to talk about is we're really here for an 18-foot variance. I mean, that's all this is an 18-foot variance. We have a barn that was located with construction proceeding under the prior 25-foot variance when it was an A1 zoning. Now we have this agritourism opportunity that was passed May 7th, 2019, and it has a 50-foot buffer. And so all this is about is an 18-foot variance. Importantly, Mr. Thomas, the neighbor who's adjacent to this barn, is in agreement. He is in agreement with the plans. Mr. Haddon has added additional trees at the specific request of Mr. Thomas, and that's been done, and that's why you have this modification. So we submit to you that the adjacent neighbor for whom the buffer requirement is designed to protect is in agreement with this. I do want to briefly address the concerns about sound amplification. I don't want to duplicate what Abe has shared with you, other than saying the owner has worked very hard to control the sound and tested it, and has done a tremendous job with a beautiful building of being able to control sound indoors. The second proposed condition on this request, we believe, is really out of place in this instance. And that's because there's no reason that because this particular owner actually took the step of building something indoors that could control sound, that they should be treated differently than someone else in an agritourism who simply goes 100 feet from the buffer, puts up a tent, and has outdoor sound amplification, and they don't even need to be here. There's no need for a variance. What we have here is the opposite. You have an owner who intends to be very respectful and has built a sound, a building, gone to great lengths to control sound on the property. And so to essentially, I'm going to use the word punish him for doing that by adding a condition that is not otherwise in that agritourism ordinance, we believe is not appropriate in this instance. And we in fact think that you as the commission you've already done a wonderful job protecting these neighbors and any other neighbors in Oconee County with respect to sound. That's why you have your sound ordinances, and they're very clear, and he will comply with them. There is no reason in this instance to add something other than what you already have in existence. And importantly, the agritourism, you addressed it. It was contemplated what the outdoor sound would be in agritourism. In section 315 it specifically says that all outdoor sound amplification shall cease between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. To the extent he were to have anything outdoors, it will comply with that requirement. And that is the requirement for all agritourism in Oconee County. So we think you've addressed that well. And just to I feel like a little frame of reference is helpful here. What we're talking about is if somebody wants to have an outdoor wedding, not the reception, the wedding ceremony, and the minister wants to have a mic and you want to have music for the bride to walk down the aisle, that's what we're talking about here. any receptions are going to be inside. They're going to be in that building, and that is going, as we've indicated, to be well-controlled sound. So we certainly appreciate your time. We appreciate the diligence that you all have shown in considering this, and we hope that that you will consider our request favorably and not include those two additional conditions, which we believe are not necessary. Anytime we have left, we'll reserve for rebuttal and certainly answer questions. Thank you for your attention.
It's 5:18. You want to reserve all that for rebuttal? All right, very good. Mr. David Ellison.
David Ellison, reside at 1521 Willowbrook Road. I represent several homeowners who reside in Moss Creek subdivision. And I just want to make clear, we are not opposed at all at anything that was played in that video. I mean, that video, we are okay with a use as a blueberry farm open to the public. Our concern is how that venue would look like inside in between the hours of 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. after a full day of refreshments. We believe that that use is going to create a nuisance and it should be opposed. And I like to follow up on a comment that Mr. Deloach made, is that this board has already weighed these competing interests between neighboring property owners when it enacted this ordinance in December of 2019. This is the very first variance request that's come before this board, and as the board considers whether to grant it, you should keep in mind that this board just in December said that there should be a 100-foot buffer between next to an adjoining residential use. That fact has been somewhat breezed past so far, but it should be underscored that we're talking about a 100-foot buffer. And they are seeking an exception to the 50-foot buffer. So they're seeking an exception to the exception, and it should be denied because if this board establishes that precedent, then we can throw these buffer requirements out the window. And so if I may, I want to ask some witnesses to testify this evening. If I may start with Ms. Lynn Bailey.
Yes, my name is Lynn Bailey, and I live in the Moss Creek subdivision. And our home actually is immediately adjacent to the Hayden property. And Mr. Hayden and his wife invited the Moss Creek neighborhood to come and see the event building and to listen to the music inside. This was late April after he had filed the application. And we accepted his invitation and we went en masse. The neighborhood walked through our backyard, again, immediately adjacent to the Hayden property, went into the building. Mr. Hayden turned the music on and we were inside the building. It was quite loud. We weren't able to talk to each other. So we opened the side door and stepped outside. We were quite shocked when we did that at the level of the noise. So then we decided en masse to walk back to our neighborhood, and the noise continued at that very loud volume. It certainly wasn't an ambient noise. It was very definitely a nuisance that continued to be loud until we continued into our neighborhood. And we don't, as a neighborhood, feel that there's a condition that could be imposed that would allow or enable this noise to be contained, meaning those doors to be closed. For that reason, we strongly request that this variance be denied. Thank you.
I may ask Mr. Guy Herring to approach as well, asking some questions. Now, Mr. Herring, what is your office or title with Oconee County?
I'm the Director of Planning and Code Enforcement.
And early on in this process, I submitted an open records request in regards to this property. So you're familiar with this property, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and so I'm showing you, can you switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. And so I'm showing you up top here of this slide. You're familiar, this property was originally, he originally applied for a residential permit for this particular structure, correct? And I can show you that same document right here.
I cannot read that, but okay, thank you.
So did he apply for a residential building permit for this structure?
It is on the residential building permit application, yes.
And so this was originally for a barn for packing and storage, is that correct?
That's what it shows on the site plan, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And so after, I noticed too in your file, there was a document from Oconee County Environmental Health that says, and if you could please go to the next slide, that this septic system was accommodate 1 bedroom in a 25-employee berry processing facility with sinks. Is that correct?
That is what it shows, yes.
Okay, and so is there any document in your file that shows approval for any kind of septic or sewer system or reception hall that can hold up to 250 people?
Not in, that you've shown me, no.
Okay, and so are you aware in your file, is there any kind of commercial permit for this particular structure?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Is there a difference between a commercial structure and a residential structure?
Yes.
Are there different standards involved for a commercial structure and a residential structure?
Yes.
Okay. So after this was approved as a barn for storage, if we could go to the next slide, please. Mr. Hayden applied, shortly applied for the reception hall. Do you remember that? And I'm showing you this,
not, sorry.
I'm showing you the same document right here. So in 2017, he applied for a reception hall for this structure. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And this was ultimately denied. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And so since then, obviously, we're back again for this residential, for this structure. If we can go to the next slide, please. I'm showing you a letter that was submitted by the agent for the applicant. And if you look at that last sentence, it says all doors and windows will be closed during any wedding event or when in use. Do you see that sentence?
Yes,
Now, you are in charge of code enforcement, correct?
that's correct.
Are code enforcement employees working between after the hours of 5 o'clock?
No, sir.
And are they working on weekends?
No, sir.
So a code enforcement employee is not able to enforce the conditions and statements that the applicant has suggested. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, they've also stated that, if I go to the next slide, please, that this would be some type of hardship if this was denied. Now, is it your understanding as to what kind of variance request they are seeking? Is it a hardship or a special exception?
I believe they filed for the hardship.
If I can just
Sorry.
refresh your memory right here.
Special exception.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Hare. I have no further questions. If I could call, please call Mr. Hayden, please. Thank you. Now, you've represented this as a primarily family-friendly blueberry farm. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, is it your contention that having parties and alcohol, amplified music until 11 p.m. is consistent with a family-friendly atmosphere?
I think wedding receptions start families.
Okay. All right. So I'm showing you, this has been submitted in your application. And this shows the location of the barn. Do you see that?
I do.
And so the barn is well within the 100-foot agritourism use setback. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. We can go to the next slide, please. Now I'm showing you the full photograph, what you have here. Now, I saw in your video that you have people picking blueberries. And is that the blueberry field on the lower left-hand corner?
It is.
Now, are you able to use this property as a blueberry farm without this variance?
Well, the barn is actually considered our all-weather shelter with the state, so it's part of our agritourism use, and it is considered our all-weather shelter.
Okay, so, but is an all-weather shelter the same thing as a wedding venue?
Nope.
Can be, I guess. That's what we're going for.
Okay. And so even if this was denied, you could continue to use this property for its principal use. Is that correct?
I don't believe so. I don't believe I could have public in there for agritourism use.
Okay.
This is just for agritourism use.
So it's my understanding that your agent indicated that the principal use for this would be a blueberry farm. Is that correct?
The principal use is a farm use, yes.
And that this wedding venue would be a secondary use. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the only reason why we're here today is because of the secondary use.
Yeah, well, it's to be able to use the barn.
For a wedding venue.
Or for agritourism use.
All right.
Wedding is an agritourism use.
Okay, all right, I have no further questions. Thank you. So appreciate everyone's patience with that. And as we try to wrap up with some concluding remarks, can we go to the next slide, please. And so this is the first time this issue's come before the board. And we submit that this board must apply these standards because this is a quasi-judicial hearing looking at this particular property at issue. And so this board must consider these standards. And so the first standard, we say, this would, they have failed to meet their burden, that this would not cause substantial detriment to the public good. They sought approval of this property for a barn under a residential permit. They are seeking a commercial use for a wedding venue. The only document in this file is for a septic tank for 25 employees for one bedroom. They're seeking up to 10 times that amount for a wedding venue. Plus, they submitted a permit for a barn for storage. And immediately after Dogapalooza, which all y'all may remember from this 2 years ago, they got caught and submitted the special use application. And once was a barn for storage, magically turned into a reception hall. He has misled this county's employees to get this approval. He's built the structure within 18 foot of the border. Even without all this, he was within the buffers. And so the board should not authorize an exception to an exception for this particular circumstance. This board has already decided and weighed these issues as to competing property interest. And the board has decided that 100 feet must exist, 100 feet. And they made no attempt to justify why they should have an exception to that rule. So that reason alone, this should be rejected. Even beyond that, they're just breezing past to this 50-foot requirement. We submit it is improper it may be proper to have an exception, a variance for the 100 feet, but it would be completely improper to have the exception to the safe harbor, that 50 feet. So this should be denied, and because there's no compelling reason to do this, and there's no evidence to support it. And so this, even today, they have not demonstrated any kind of hardship. You do not have a constitutional right to a wedding venue. He could have applied for a hardship variance, but he chose not to. So that's not even on y'all's consideration tonight. Importantly, though, there's no hardship as a matter of fact, because he can use this property as a blueberry farm. Everything you saw on that video, we are okay with. He can continue to use that. He can use his barn as a barn for storage, which is what this county has already approved. He can use that barn for whatever regulation he just cited, because that will be consistent with what this county has approved and will be consistent with my client's property rights to ensure they're not next to a wedding venue that has a nuisance until 11 o'clock at night. There's no hardship here as a matter of law. One does not have a right to a rezone simply because they can profit from it. And so we're asking you to deny this for a variety of reasons, because just think about the practicalities involved. How can this be enforced? They're saying that, oh, we'll be good neighbors. We'll make sure doors are closed. That's just not practical. How can you have 200 people in a room and ensure the doors are closed at all times? There's no mechanism for this county to enforce such a condition. Mr. Herring testified that code enforcement is not going to be working during this time. So the only way to address this issue and protect my client's property rights is to apply the ordinance as it was enacted by this board in December. And so ultimately, just want to repeat, we have no issue with this blueberry farm. The issue is with this proposed use as a reception venue. The reason why you have these buffer requirements is to protect neighboring property owners from incompatible uses. You know, they mentioned Adrian Thomas says he's in favor of it. Why isn't he here today? This is quasi judicial, that is hearsay. All y'all may remember from 2 years ago, he was one of the most passionate people opposed to that. He stood up and said he was opposed to this. And unfortunately, time and illness has prevented him from being here today. So don't take that at face value. Remember what you saw 2 years ago when he appeared. He was opposed to this with the exact same use. And so we're asking this board to deny this exception to the exception. The board has already created these rules. Apply them. We're just asking you to apply them. Do not create an exception for this particular scenario where he broke the rules from the very beginning. My clients have always played by the rules. And you should consider that when weighing whether or not the applicant has carried his burden of proof and carried his burden of persuasion. At the end of the day, this would be injurious to the use of my client's property. They're in the immediate vicinity. And we'd ask you to please deny this application. Thank you.
We have no one else sign up to speak again, so we'll turn it back over for rebuttal. You have 5 minutes and 18 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first mention that you do create codes, you do create regulations. Part of what you create is the variance process. For situations like this, for cases like this, if you don't have that mechanism, the codes do not apply to every case there is out there. And that's why you have a special exceptions variance procedure and variances. So first of all, the property is an agritourism use. It's not just a farm. It's a farm under the agritourism. The use of weddings venues is part of the agritourism. We're not adding any uses. We're not changing possible uses or allowed uses under that. The barn itself, to correct the gentleman, it was not 18 foot from the property. It's 18 foot short. It's 32 feet away from the property line, just to make a correction. The barn, when you apply for a barn to build, it's always applied on a residential application. There is not a commercial application for a barn. That's the procedure. There's nothing wrong. This is what you do. You can ask Mr. Herring as well on that. So in 2017, the reason there were issues, Mr. Haddon was going for a B1 rezone, and you recall that got turned down. And that's the reason there was an opposition. A B1 zoning is totally different, as you may know, than what we have before you. So we're dealing with a reduction and a buffer. And imagine that we go and build a barn with no walls, nothing, 100 feet from the line, and have the venues. Do you think you're going to have noise coming out of there, more noise from that or less from the barn? I mean, it's a simple matter. If you put the noise inside doors and you insulate the heck out of that barn and the ceilings, and you make it as soundproof as possible, you know you're going to reduce that noise by a whole lot. You don't have to have any other permit to do the barn, open barn, 100 feet away, and you could have all the music. As long as you're below the noise levels, you're going to hear it a lot more from any neighbor, especially Mr. Thomas. The reason Mr. Thomas is not here, he's happy with everything we presented to him. We met with him, and he wanted that evergreen buffer, and we took care of that, and he was very pleased with it. So to also talk about the septic, the septic has been improved and will be by the county codes. We're not saying that we're going to put a one-bedroom system out there. It's already been approved to put enough for whatever is required for the use of the barn. So by the regulations of environmental health. Now, also the gentleman has talked about the doors that cannot be maintained or cannot be monitored, closed. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Haddon has spent a lot of money insulating and put the state-of-the-art HVAC system in that barn, simply because they want people to be comfortable in any season, any time of the year. So, but even with the doors open, we tested the noise levels and they were way low, not noticeable at the property line, not even 300 feet away, which is supposed to be tested at. So I'll leave some time for Mr. Deloach.
I'll be very brief. I don't know. Thank you. I don't want to waste time reiterating. I'll simply say that it's important to keep in mind that Mr. Haddon could put a tent up 100 feet from the property line and have a wedding with sound and everything else without being here, without having spent as much money as he did, without a variance. Instead, he's done something which we believe is far superior, and that is to build a building that insulates sound and makes him a better neighbor. And we submit to you, that's why Mr. Thomas, the immediately adjacent neighbor, is not here. So again, we ask you to keep in mind what we're asking for. And this is all about an 18-foot variance. That's it. The rest of the discussion tries to bring in issues that are not really on the table before y'all tonight. So we appreciate your consideration and your time, and certainly ask for your favorable vote on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comments at this time and open it up to questions from commissioners.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and start. Following up on what Mr. Deloach said, if Mr. Herron would come to the podium, I'll direct it to him. Mr. Herron, could you just briefly describe again what Mr. Haddon has the right to do if he were to do not use the building for a particular night, but there was going to be a wedding out there? What could he do?
Well, currently he could, as an agritourism use, have a wedding venue on the property as long as he met those buffer requirements. So the statement that was made that he could put a tent up, he could put up a new barn, as long as he's outside of that 100-foot buffer, he could do that by right. And so it would then allow a wedding venue, on the property without any walls, potentially. And thus sound would more than likely carry, depending on the sound that's played. But with the building itself, obviously it would be insulated and would be a secure location, a better location for that sound to be muted so that it didn't affect adjacent properties.
Yes, sir. I agree with you on that. But if he were to have, let's say, I won't use my daughter because I'm not paying for another wedding for her. But if there was a young lady and the parents were going to have an outdoor wedding and reception outside, he could have a band. Is that correct?
Yes.
Outside, as long as he complied with the buffers.
With the noise ordinance, yes, sir.
Okay. Now the second question that was you can help me answer this one. I know you don't have people working all night, but the sheriff's department does. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's who would be charged with following up on any noise complaints after hours.
And would it be the sheriff's department that cited the property owner or whomever it might be out there in charge?
I believe typically they would remedy the situation and then provide a record to our staff to follow up on.
Okay. And if it was deemed necessary to cite the owner, let's say Mr. Haddon, in this case, he would have to come before the probate judge or magistrate judge.
That's correct, magistrate.
And if he were found guilty, he could lose a license to conduct any business. Is that correct?
He could lose the opportunity, yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, so there is a remedy to this 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. If anybody's making noise beyond or in violation of our noise ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay, and that would be for anybody.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mr. Herring, while you're there, I've got a few questions also. Just a clarification on the permit for the barn. It was stated that it should have been a different type of permit. What is our procedure for the barn permit?
We used in that time a residential permit and then designated on that permit what the use was going to be. So it would follow the residential permitting process as opposed to a commercial permitting process.
Okay. And then I also had the same question about a tent being placed outside of the buffer so that and you can have a band out there in the tent operating at the same time.
Correct.
Okay. And as far as the rules and procedures that the commission sets or the county ordinance sets, then that is to be enforced on site by the owner until there's a problem. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's the onus of the property owner or applicant to manage those conditions on site so that there are not any issues or violations.
Okay. And then to follow up on that, then when there is a violation, then the sheriff's department would get involved and then you would be notified at that point.
That's correct.
Guy, just a clarification on the second condition. So that condition, does it apply for if he had a wedding off the 100-foot over? I mean, so I'm trying to understand that condition. So is that condition just related to the barn, to the wedding hall, the building now? Or is it because he can have it 100 feet away? So, and I don't know if that condition was ever meant to say you can't have amplification for the preacher or a wedding music or anything like that. I don't think that condition was actually but should have been stated in that kind of context.
Right. Yeah. That was to mitigate the sound that might be emanating from the property. So there was an attempt by staff to, mitigate any noise that might emanate from the property.
Is there a better way to write that?
There could be. I mean, obviously we can fall back on the noise ordinance and the agritourism ordinance, which discusses the noise standards and the timing. If there's a desire by the board, to add some type of level at some point on the property, that would be an option as well. One thing you could do is possibly, if it's required that it not be plainly audible at the property line, or at the setback line, or at the buffer line, those types of things. That could be an option for the board as well.
Okay. I'm good with that.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Did you review the alternate landscape plan, and is there any comments on that?
We did. No, I would suggest if the board so deemed appropriate to approve, that we make that as a condition binding on the property owner to install that. The landscape plan that showed the entire buffer being planted along the northern side, Mr. Thomas's side. And then I would also include as a condition the other plan, the alternative plan to the wall that was required by condition number 1. when looking at the topography of that site, the wall would definitely fall off below really the level of the building. So it probably would not benefit as much as the additional landscaping that would along that property line.
So since a band is allowed by right within the, outside the 100-foot buffer, the number 2 variant or condition, any suggestions on how to phrase that so
Yeah,
you
well,
can have
so-
some amplified sound
Right.
for the preacher to speak and the here comes the bride stuff, but then
I think at this point, if the board so deemed appropriate, that it would be just falling back to that noise ordinance, unless there was to be some limit at a property line or something like that.
thank you.
I got a question for Mr. Haddon. Obviously, this goes back a while, and we know that the 18-foot is the issue for the most part that started it all up. And you heard from one of the other speakers earlier. Would you be acceptable to that? Obviously, if you look at the building itself, one door goes up a hill, out into the pasture, out into the parking area. One goes back towards your house or towards the other buildings. But the other one does go down to a kind of a lake that kind of does project sound off of the lake itself. Would you be amenable to doing something to that side door that would actually have a double door system that would, because you know as well as I do, when people walk out a door, the amplification is going to go, it's going to go out the door, no question about it. And people typically at weddings, receptions, go out, smoke or chat or whatever so they can't talk.
So that door is designed only to be the catering door. Is what it's for the caterer to bring food in. And I did take a video, I'm not sure if you got to see it or not, that it showed us putting 90 decibels in the meter at like 10 feet inside, had the door propped completely open. And I got in a golf cart with the sound playing and actually drove across the other side of the pond with the music playing and had the meter pulled up again. It was at 48 decibels and all you could hear was the fountain in the pond. And at the same time, I actually happened to talk to one of the neighbors and ended up talking to him for, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes in the yard. And the whole time the sound was playing. And it wasn't an issue that you could, every once in a while, I guess if the wind was right, you might catch a little or something that was, but you couldn't tell where it was coming from. I mean, it could have been noise on Morris Hill Road. The 4-lane traffic is a lot louder than what it was. All you heard was the ambient noise of the fountain in the pond.
It seems to be a sticking point for them too. So wouldn't it behoove you just to go ahead and try to make something happen like that so that it's just.
I don't, with the brick, I don't know how to make it happen, the way the barn is designed. I looked at it after it was brought to my attention and I talked to several people and I don't know, if you can't hear the sound at the property line, I don't know what it would do to do that. And I don't know how to design something that wouldn't look like you'd put a Band-Aid on top of something. Because the brick barn, the barn is completely brick exterior.
Yeah, I was thinking something inside.
And that's in your kind of floor space right there. And it would be sticking out the same kind of way on the inside. Looks like you put just something extra on it. And I can't figure out, obviously you could put something there. What it would look like, I don't know. But if there's not a problem across the pond, what solution am I trying to find to a problem that doesn't exist?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve variance number P20-0035 with the two conditions, but modify the two conditions. Number one, to remove the wall and then add the alternate landscaping plan. And then number two, the sound should meet the noise ordinance, and also that it cannot be plainly audible. I think, was that your term? Plainly audible at the property line.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Thomas is through.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. We have a motion to approve variance number P200035 with the two modified conditions as presented. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Our next item is variance number P20-0053. This is John and Angie Howell, Julian Crossing and Julian Drive. It's 0.922 acres. This is to allow accessory structure in the front yard of a residential property.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. You'll see the location map for P20-0053 for the Howells. This is located at Julian Drive, Julian Crossing, the corner lot B02B001D. It's currently zoned R1 in the regional center character area. And you'll notice on the site plan, there's location, the proposed location for the potting shed is shown there. This is a representative photo of the potting shed. We do believe it's going to be placed on the ground. And then there are, we do believe it meets the necessary criteria to grant a hardship variance as submitted.
Very good. Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Good evening, Commissioners. I guess what I didn't realize is I have two front yards. And my wife would like to have a potting shed. And so when I got the survey, I looked at the building setback and it was 40 feet. And I thought that I had set the proposed potting shed behind the 40 feet. But since we didn't build the structure, it was brought to my attention that the building has to be behind the back corner of the house, which puts it at 52 feet. And I guess we're just asking for a variance to put a potting shed on the property so my wife can get the stuff out of the garage.
Thank you, sir. That's all for now. We may have a question for you.
Okay.
Does anyone else wish to speak for this variance request? Does anyone wish to speak against this variance request? We'll go ahead and close public comment this time and open it up to any questions. We'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve variance number P20-0053, John and Angie Huell, Julian Crossing and Julian Drive, 9.92 acres, allowing accessory structure in front yard of residential property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve variance number P20-0053. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. All right, next item is variance number P20-0091. This is Stonebridge Partners LLC. This is east of Hog Mountain Road and west of Stonebridge Parkway. It's 39.55 acres. Request is R1 residential.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The location map variance P20-0091. This is the aerial photography of the property and the zoning map that shows the subject property is zoned R1. The property is proposed to be developed as a residential subdivision. However, when the commercial properties were developed next to it, the buffer was not required at that time from either of those properties. And the UDC requires that if a buffer is not provided on the adjacent property, one would have to be provided on the subject property. Thus the rezone request. It's in the Civic Center character area. And this is the proposed subdivision development. with the buffers shown by the dashed line around those two lots. If the board does not approve those buffers, those two lots would not have enough usable soils for them to be two lots. They would have to be combined into one as required by environmental health, because buffers do not count for usable soils according to environmental health. This is a zoomed in close-up shot of that required buffer and the two lots. Staff does believe that this meets the requirements of and all necessary conditions to grant a special exception variance.
Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Williams, representing Stonebridge Partners LLC. This is a subdivision we've been working on now for well over a year. I know all you guys are familiar with the challenges that we face in general with the health department and trying to permit single family lots and the change in ordinances and regulations that seem to kind of continually flow about. In the middle of permitting this particular subdivision, there were several changes that came to pass that excluded soils that have previously been included for septic tank lots. So in an effort, in addition to the fact that, this particular issue is not one that we created at all. I mean, there was no buffer required when these other developments were built. Had there been, we wouldn't be in front of you today. One point is that anyone that buys these lots is going to know exactly what they're getting. I mean, this is a end user product here, so we're not protecting the adjacent property owner at all. We're simply not protecting the lot, which is going to be a very open and honest conversation there that somebody's going to say, well, I either want to buy it or I don't want to buy it, and if they don't want to buy it, they won't buy it. But we would definitely like the option to be able to do this. This is a place that I feel like we would want to concentrate our growth in an area very, very much adjacent to our retail services and our roadway networks and our schools. So I don't see any reason to really penalize these guys and have them lose a single lot by not approving this variance tonight, when in fact it doesn't hurt the adjacent property owner at all. So I would appreciate your consideration in this matter. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak for this variance request? Does anyone wish to speak against? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open it up to any questions.
Not to me.
I have none.
With that, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve variance P 20-0091, Stonebridge Partners LLC, as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second to approve variance number P 20-0091. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our next item is rezone number P 20-0092. This is for Connie West. It's McCree's Gin Road at Ashford Road. It's 7.72 acres. Request is AG to AR3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The location map for P 20-0092 Connie West. The aerial map showing the parcel off of Ashford Road. It's currently zoned AG in the country estates character area. And again, the applicant requests to split off a portion of that property for a single family home. Representative photos, and staff recommends approval of the rezone with the one condition, and Planning Commission also recommended approval with the same condition.
Okay. Now we'll hear from the owner or the agent of the owner.
Good evening. Hope you are doing well. My name is Jesse West, and I live at 1520 Lincoln Drive. I'm here on behalf of Carter Engineering and our client, Connie West. She's actually my mom as well. And first off, I want to thank everybody for, being here and hearing our request. And with that, the request that we're making, just like I was talking about, was we're requesting for my mom's property to be rezoned from agricultural to AR3, mainly so that my wife, my daughter, and I can move out there and build a house next to my mother. My mom has owned the property for 35 plus years. It's where I was born and raised and grew up, and love to offer that opportunity to my daughter. And that's really it. My mom's also getting kind of old in age, and for her to be out there by herself to take care of the land and take care of way too many gardens that she has, we really just enjoy the opportunity to be able to help out with that. So that's our request. If you have any questions, we'd gladly answer them.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak for this rezone? Does anyone wish to speak against? With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and open up to any questions.
None.
Very good. We'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we approve rezone number P20-0092, County West, McRegions Road, Ashford Road, AG to AR3. With the one-
Second.
Very good. We have a motion to approve rezone number P20-0092 with one condition. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. All right, next item is consider appointments to the Oconee County or the Keep Oconee County Beautiful Commission for 3 terms to begin immediately, 1 to expire on June 30, 2020, or 2 to expire on June 30, 2023, and 1 to begin immediately and expire on June 30, 2021. Is that all right? Okay.
Might get some help on that first one, that first name. No, I make a motion we approve Fatma Gurel Kazinski for immediately 6/30/2021, and Emily Mixon, Rachel Tandy, and Ben Young immediately from 6/30/2023.
I'll make a second that one.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. The next item is to consider the adoption of the SPLOST 2021 intergovernmental agreement with the cities of Oconee County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've seen this IGA several times before. This is the final iteration. It contains a cost share of the upcoming SPLOST 21, which would be on the November general election for consideration by the voters. In this case, this has a cost share of municipalities and the county broken down by population percentile. And embedded within the IGA itself, you see the proposed projects from the county as well as the 4 municipalities. The one caveat is Bogart still has to send their final breakdown within the project so that the projects are listed. So the ask tonight is to approve the IGA with the 4 municipalities and move forward. And then as a reminder, at the July agenda setting meeting, we'll presumably authorize the call for the referendum and then move forward from that perspective. So what you have before you right now is the approval of the IGA with the 4 municipalities of Oconee County.
Very good. Any questions on this? Any public comment? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the SPLOST 21 intergovernmental agreement with the 4 municipalities.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Our next item is consent agenda. Does any commissioner wish any item to be removed from the consent agenda?
No.
No.
We'll entertain a motion then.
I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. We do not have need of an executive session.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right. Thank y'all.